Hi there. We're going to hopefully finish up this chapter. We're going to talk about cardiac output, and then we're going to talk about the things that affect the cardiac output. So cardiac output is the amount of blood that leaves our heart every minute, and the amount of blood can increase or decrease depending on the health of the heart, the size of the heart, the two factors that determine cardiac output are the heart rate and the stroke volume. Hello, there we go. So the heart rate is the number of beats per minute, and in a healthy heart, typically the heart will beat about 75 times per minute. The stroke volume is the amount of blood ejected during one heartbeat. And in a healthy adult, again, at rest, it's about 70 milliliters of blood per minute. This can change depending on the health of the individual. So we can determine the cardiac output by taking the heart rate times the stroke volume. So typical heart rate here, 75 beats per minute, and typical stroke volume, 70 milliliters per beat. So we take 75 times 70, we get 5,250 milliliters of blood per minute. And that leads us to 5.25 liters of blood per minute that leave our heart. Since we have about 5 liters, 4 to 6 liters in a healthy adult, we're pushing all of that blood through our system every single minute. So that's a lot of work that our heart is doing, and that's a lot of blood that's moving through our heart every minute as well. The heart size is going to affect the rate of the heart and the stroke volume of the heart. So smaller hearts have to beat faster because they have a smaller stroke volume. You can't have the same size stroke volume if you have a small heart. You have less blood that can get into the ventricles at any given time. So you have a faster heart rate to keep the same amount of blood moving through your system. Which would also, if you have a larger heart, you can have a larger stroke volume, which means you can have a slower heart rate, and you're still getting the same amount of blood through your system. Typically, we see larger hearts in healthy individuals that have worked their heart muscle out. So Lance Armstrong has a heart rate of 33 beats per minute, and he's a healthy individual. The reserve volume is the amount of blood that's left in the ventricles at the end. Once the stroke volume has left, once the ventricles have contracted, blood leaves. The amount of blood that's still in the ventricles is the cardiac reserve, and that can increase the amount of blood moving through your system. So increase the amount of blood being pushed out during exercise, and stuff like that. And it can increase in individuals that are more healthy. There are agents that can influence the heart rate. These are called chronotropic agents, and they affect how fast or slow the heart beats. So they act on the SA node or the AV node. If they are positive chronotropic agents, they're going to increase the heart rate. If they are negative chronotropic agents, they're going to decrease the heart rate. So these are a few of the positive chronotropic agents that affect heart rate and increase the heart's activity. A lot of times during sympathetic stimulation, if you're drinking a stimulant, or taking drugs that can be considered stimulating. Negative chronotropic agents are going to slow that heart rate down. So parasympathetic innervation slows the heart rate down. Anything that blocks norepinephrine and epinephrine from binding to the heart is going to slow the heart rate down. There's also agents that influence stroke volume. So we have venous return. The amount of blood that comes back to the heart is going to influence the amount of blood that leaves the heart. Inotropic agents, agents that influence the strength of a contraction, and the afterload, the pressure of the arteries on the ventricles. So venous return is directly correlated to the amount of blood that's going to leave. The less blood that comes back, the less blood that we can push out. We can't push something that's not there. And in the opposite direction, the more blood that comes back, the more blood we can push out. Oh, hold on a second. Frank Starling's law is a relationship between the amount of blood that comes back and the stroke volume. If we increase the amount of blood coming back, we increase the stretch on the ventricles, and that's going to cause the ventricles to contract even stronger, pushing more blood out. Less blood comes back, less stretch on the heart muscle on those ventricles, and less blood is going to be pushed out. And so this is a picture that I have that I found on Google Images, and it just kind of shows the laws of the venous return. If you have increased blood volume, you're going to increase the stretch on the myocardium. Ventricles will contract more forcefully. And then if you decrease the amount of blood coming back, that's going to decrease the stretch because you're not pushing as much. And that's going to decrease the force of the ventricles pushing blood out. So venous return tends to increase during exercise, and it decreases when you are at rest. Venous return will also increase with a slower heart rate because you're giving more time for blood to come back. And I just said this. Decreases when we are at rest. It's also going to decrease if we hemorrhage because we have less blood able to come back. And if we have a very high heart rate, it's going to decrease because we're not giving the heart enough time to fill up. So the ventricles don't fill up as full, which means you're going to have less blood leaving. Inotropic agents are factors that influence the contractility of the heart. So typically you're looking at changes in the amount of calcium that is going to be released. So remember from last semester in chapter 10, we talked about muscle contractions. Now calcium has to bind to troponin. Troponin and tropomyosin move off of actin. Actin and myosin get together and a contraction occurs, right? Well, this all is correct, is true for skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. So the more calcium we have available, the more cross bridges we can form, and the stronger that contraction can be. Less calcium, less cross bridges, smaller contraction, or smaller contractility. Less contractility, that might be better. So here we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Remember in skeletal muscle we have a very, very nice sarcoplasmic reticulum which holds a lot of calcium. But for cardiac muscle as well as smooth muscle, we have a very scanty sarcoplasmic reticulum. So calcium not only comes from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, but it also comes in through calcium channels to bind to the troponin and then allows the muscle contraction to occur. Anything that increases calcium then is going to be a positive inotropic agent because it's going to allow for more cross bridges to form and so a stronger contraction. Thyroid hormone, digitalis, these are going to these are going to be used to increase the contractility of the heart, making the stroke volume or increasing the amount of blood we can push out with each stroke volume. Negative inotropic agents are going to be things that decrease the amount of calcium available. And if we decrease the amount of calcium available, we decrease the ability to form those cross bridges because calcium isn't binding, so the troponin-tropomyosin complex is going to be covering the myosin binding site on the actin. So calcium channel blockers are going to be negative inotropic agents, and they're going to decrease the contractility of the heart. The afterload is the resistance seen in arteries, so those large arteries, against the ventricle contraction. We have to increase the pressure in the ventricles higher than the pressure in the arteries to push blood out. So the more resistance we have in the arteries, the less blood that can be released. If the lumens of the arteries are very small because you have buildup of plaque, of cholesterol, fatty tissues, that's going to cause the heart not to be able to push as much fluid out. And in the opposite side, the larger the lumen, the more the less pressure the arteries will have, and the more blood that can flow out. This is the end of our chapter 19. I hope you've enjoyed it, and please come to class with lots and lots and lots of questions. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye.